So, first of all, I think I got your introduction before, but just in case, could you tell me who you are and what you do and everything like that?
Okay. I'm Robert Hurt. I'm the visualization scientist for NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope project. We're this infrared cousin to the Hubble Space Telescope. And what I do is basically help with public communication of science information, whether it's taking data and rendering it into sort of the final format that we put out and release to the public, or creating artistic visualizations of things we can't see directly that kind of illuminate the science.
Okay, cool. And one of the most interesting questions to me that was asked by one of the audience was how we see, like in social structures and the structure of the internet and neurological structure and then the structure of the universe, they all seem to have some kinds of parallels. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and why you think that is the case, or if it is even the case.
Well, I mean, the laws of physics kind of work at all scales, and obviously different factors come in. Strong force only operates on tiny places, electromagnetic and shorter space, gravity over long space. But the basic mathematics behind, say, network structures actually works on all scales. And so, the filamentary structures, the way networks form in the large-scale structure of the universe, at least visually, we see kind of networks like this forming on nature at all scales. So the physics behind it may alter at different scales, but there is kind of a core of mathematics that I think underlies a lot more fundamentally a lot of structures you see in nature.
Do you think that there might be some kind of like human biases towards that, like and things like that, like because we're seeing things and we're human and we have our human perception, that might bias us seeing all these different things being tied together and looking similar?
No, that's actually a very clear point. I mean, one thing that we do as humans, we're pattern seekers, and so we will look at things, we look for patterns by our very nature, and when we find them, we do tend to correlate them. Now, just because you see a similar pattern on different scales of nature doesn't mean it's exactly the same physics underlying it, right? That's a trap we walk into. We anthropomorphize things around us quite a lot. So you do want to keep in mind that finding analogies isn't the same thing as finding causality in these structures.
Excellent. And my last question is, like, obviously this was a very collaborative thing. Like many different projects, many different centers all work together, and I've noticed, because I've had the opportunity to intern at a couple different NASA centers, there's a little bit of healthy inter-program rivalry, but there also can end up being a little bit of animosity. And there's a saying that, politics stops at the water's edge. Where do you think the water's edge is for the inter-program rivalry, and where does solidarity really need to come in and be the force of the day, and when is rivalry good?
Well, obviously, any group is a little bit of like home team rah-rah, and there's always going to be that kind of collegiate rivalry with the other missions, and in part this is driven by everyone in the game is really trying to do the best they can possibly do in the process, and so that kind of rivalry I think exists naturally. I mean, obviously there are limited resources and funding, but ultimately the goal of everyone in the field of astronomy is to really get the best science done and get things out there. And while we maybe might jokingly have little rivalries between this mission and that, the bottom line is we want to be able to answer these very fundamental questions that really are touching us to the very origins of the universe. Things that 20 years ago we didn't even know were questions that we are now being enabled with the next generation of observatories, ground-based and space-based.
And that's what just brings us all together, is we're just trying to answer the questions. All right, thank you so much, Robert.
Sure.